The reverse osmosis storage tank provides a couple of functions. Number one, obviously, is to push the water to the faucet, to push the water back out of the tank. The other thing that it does for our RO system is it allows the RO system to turn off when the tank is full. And it does that via a pressure sensing valve on the RO system. Depending upon the make of the RO, that could be a little different configuration, but they all work pretty much the same way. Well, the first question to answer is, why do we need a tank with a reverse osmosis system? Reverse osmosis works very slowly. As you can imagine, we're pushing water through a membrane literally one drop at a time. So to keep from getting frustrated waiting to fill up a glass, we have a storage tank that accumulates that water over time so that when you want to fill up a glass or fill up a coffee pitcher, you've got plenty of water to do so. The next question to ask is, how does the water get back out of the tank once it's in there? To understand how a reverse osmosis storage tank works, I thought I'd draw a diagram of a hydropneumatic tank. Hydro goes with water, pneumatic means air. Well, the storage tank's reverse osmosis system has an air chamber inside. Water will not compress, but air will. So as water fills the storage tank, it compresses the air chamber. So in our storage tank, we have a bladder in the center that divides an air chamber from the water side. On the smaller tanks, the water is on the top. As the tanks get bigger, say from 10 gallons on, the water will be on the bottom because of just pure weight. Water weighs almost 9 pounds a gallon. So as you can imagine, when we have the larger storage tanks, we need gravity to help out for that air to compress and push the water out of the tank. But on the smaller ones, the air chamber's on the bottom. As this fills with water, this diaphragm pushes down into the air chamber and it compresses that air. As that air compresses, it makes a higher and higher pressure, and its design is to push the water back out of the tank to your faucet. If we didn't have this air chamber, we could fill the tank up, but then we could never get the tank empty unless we put a pump on it. So the hydropneumatic storage tanks allows us to have a delivery system, if you will, without an electric pump. These RO storage tanks come in a variety of sizes and shapes. And basically the difference is how much capacity the tank has for holding water. The tank is only going to hold so much water, and typically it's not nearly as big as the number that the tank is called by. So a 3.2 gallon tank is talking about the total void volume of the storage tank. So if we rip the bladder out and we filled it to the brim, that would be about 3.2 gallons. But when we put the diaphragm in and we fill the bottom with air, in the smaller tanks the air's on the bottom. As we get into bigger tanks, the air's on the top. That's because of the weight of the water. But once we do that, we've subtracted some of the volume of that tank. So a 3.2 gallon tank, for example, at 60 psi may only hold 2 gallons of water. The exact amount of water the tanks will hold will vary depending upon the feed pressure and the RO shutoff. So if we're running this with a standard type RO shutoff valve, that's going to happen at 2/3 line pressure. So for example, if we have 60 psi for feed, and that's what's pushing the RO membrane, the tank will raise as it fills. That air pressure inside will compress and the tank pressure will increase. When it reaches that 2/3 number, which if we have 60 pounds inlet, the tank will reach 40 pounds, which will move the valve to the closed position. Now each tank requires a precharge. The precharge is the amount of air pressure you want in the storage tank before the first drop of water goes in, so that's empty. The reason that you want to have some air pressure when it's empty is so that you can empty the tank when you put water inside. If we had zero pressure, there'd be nothing to push the water back out. So that pre-charge is important. We don't want to put too much pre-charge in because all that's going to do is reduce the capacity of the tank. So if you want to think about this, if I start putting water into a storage tank and it has 7 psi pre-charge, the tank will fill until the RO reaches that 2/3 number because of our shutoff valve. Well, if I increase the pre-charge, it's still going to shut off at that 2/3 pressure. So that means I'm going to be able to get less water in the tank because it's going to reach shutoff faster if my pre-charge is higher. So what if you don't have enough volume or capacity in your current storage tank? How do you increase that? Well, you can simply add a tank. Putting a tank in tandem or teed, they will work together as one tank basically. If you're having issues with delivery, for example, you're running to an ice machine in your refrigerator and water's coming out slowly because of the distance. If we increase our volume of water at the higher pressures, so think about 2 tanks standing side by side that fill up simultaneously, when the water is being drawn from the tank, we have more volume at that high spot to enable a longer period of time at a higher pressure. So that enhances our delivery to the ice machine and the refrigerator and the through-door dispenser. Another thing you can do to increase storage capacity is increase the pressure to the RO system with the addition of a booster pump. One of the phone calls we get frequently in regards to reverse osmosis systems not working properly is, I'm not getting any water. You know, I put all new filters in it, we let it run all night, and I'm not getting anything from the faucet. So when we troubleshoot an RO system, we go through kind of a checklist. And one of the things that we do is isolate the storage tank and check the RO system out to make sure it's making water. And a simple test that we ask the homeowner to do is to feel the tank, lift it up. If it's heavy and we can't get any water out of the faucet, that typically means the tank has lost its air charge. Well, the air charge works just like the tire on your bicycle. In fact, the air valve on the storage tank is the same one that's on your bicycle tire. It's called a Schrader valve. And over time, they can let air seep out and it slowly loses its air charge. Without air in the tank, water will not push out. So how do you get air back into it? Get out your bicycle pump and hook it up to the air. And if you can see on this tank here, it's underneath this little blue cap. And we're just going to hook our bicycle pump up to that, and we're going to start putting some air into it until water starts coming back out. And if that happens, I would recommend keep pumping until you get all the air out, and then take your bicycle tire gauge and regulate it back down to 7 psi, which is where we want our pre-charge. If after you've done that and the tank fills back up again, but it won't come out because it lost its air charge again, that's a good indicator it's time to replace the tank. If you test the air pressure and water comes out, that's a good indication that the bladder has failed and it's time to replace the tank. That's not something you can fix. Our experience tells us that these types of storage tanks, they last a good long time. It's uncommon for them to fail well before the warranty runs out, which is typically about 5 years. Usually they last a lot longer than that. I would have to say that most of the time we're talking to somebody that has a tank that's lost the air pressure. It's probably 10 years old or better. Primarily for you have to connect to the tank. If you put a valve there, it makes it convenient. If you ever have to service the tank, or in the case of troubleshooting the RO system because something doesn't seem to be right, it's really easy to be able to turn the tank valve off and then just focus your efforts on the RO system itself. without influence from the tank. A great maintenance step for the tanks is to sanitize them periodically. And our suggestion is, at minimum, sanitize the tank when you change the membrane of the reverse osmosis system. That way you're purging the tank of any kind of things that might grow in there, and all RO tanks will have some level of slime buildup after a few years. A lot of folks buy tanks to add to an existing system. We talked earlier about adding a tank to have higher capacity and better delivery. That's a great idea. Well, when a tank comes to you, especially if we ship it, it's going to go through a couple of UPS truck rides, and it's not too uncommon for a tank to show up with a dent here or there. Most of the time, they're not going to take any of the performance value of the tank away, just a cosmetic dent. If the paint is cracked and the dent is significant, then we might want to talk about it in terms of not using the tank. Because if the steel is folded far enough for the paint to crack, yeah, that's a good indicator that you need to call us and get that damage claim done. Well, that's all I have for reverse osmosis storage tanks. Just to touch base, they come from as little as 1 gallon all the way up to 120. So depending upon your need, give us a call and we'll get you lined up. Well, don't forget to like our video, subscribe to our channel, and check out all of our storage tanks on freshwatersystems.com.